Hello and welcome to another action-packed episode of Saved by the 90s. My name's Adam Patterson, and with me today is a guy who holds black belts in multiple disciplines, Mr. Ken Bakley. Hey, Ken.
Hello, and anybody who knew me when I was a kid during my very mediocre career taking karate lessons knows just how absolutely hilarious even the idea of that joke would be. Just imagine me having that level of discipline.
This month on the show, we'll be taking a look at 4 radical action movies released in August during the 90s. So get those fists ready because this is Saved by the 90s.
Heard this one before? What do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do? Blockbuster? Blockbuster. Done. So if you want to do something exciting tonight, make it a blockbuster night.
Our first title this month brings Jean-Claude Van Damme in a dual role as twins who are separated at birth, but brought together on a path of revenge. Directed by Sheldon Lettich and released on August 8th, 1991, this is Double Impact.
It's time for a lesson in arithmetic. Van Damme plus Van Damme.
There's 2 of them.
Equals Double Impact. Class dismissed. Rated R. Feel the Impact Friday, August 9th.
Jean-Claude Van Damme plays a dual role as Alex and Chad, twins separated at the death of their parents. Chad is raised by a family retainer in Paris. Alex becomes a petty crook in Hong Kong. Seeing a picture of Alex, Chad rejoins him and convinces him that his rival in Hong Kong is also the man who killed their parents. Alex is suspicious of Chad, especially when it comes to his girlfriend. Ken, we'll start it off with you. What did you think of Double Impact?
So, when we were discussing the films that we were going to be talking about this month, we pointed out that Double Impact, just in its concept of twins as a central narrative device and featuring Jean-Claude Van Damme playing both of them, this is a 1991 movie that feels so extraordinarily 80s. And that's a major takeaway. Before anything else, I want to give credit to many great fashion choices made by Chad in the early portions of this movie. He had some great shorts.
Yeah, Chad rocking the pastels in this, just living it up, living the 80s. That scene in the beginning when we're first introduced to Chad and he's wearing like that leotard or whatever, whatever it is.
Extremely 80s.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this is a show about the 90s, but sometimes we get those early 90s movies that are still holding on to the 80s style, and it's really fun to dive into those.
You get surprises on the show. Though not a surprise for you, because I believe you told me that you own this film on Blu-ray. So
I do.
So you're quite familiar with it. Tell us a bit about your history with the film Double Impact.
Yeah, actually, I don't have much history with this movie at all. In fact, I never saw this before it came out on Blu-ray last year. So there's this collection called the MVD Rewind Collection that MVD started, and they've been putting out like these kind of 90s. It's almost all 90s action movies. It's a really great collection, and I reviewed Double Impact last year. It was actually last June for them. So that was the first time I saw it. And it's a really good version of the movie. Like, they remastered it, and it's got all kinds of bonus content and stuff. So I would definitely recommend it. But yeah, I don't have like a whole lot of nostalgia for this movie or anything, since I never saw it before.
Well, I mean, you saw it last June, which by the way things are going, June 2019 may as well have been June 1999.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like an eternity ago. I had to look it up because I was like, I'm pretty sure I wrote a review for this, and I looked it up and I'm like, oh, okay, I did write a review. So I do have a written review for this up on the site. It's specifically about the Blu-ray, but it gets into the movie itself for a little bit as well. You know, looking at the film overall, I thought it was fine. I mean, it's just hokey enough to not be boring, And the whole like double Van Damme mechanic it's pretty fun, although I don't think they do quite enough with it to make it something that's truly notable. It's pretty much just a pretty generic action movie for the most part.
I mean, that was a main problem I had with it, is that they didn't really do anything with its concept. After a point, it may as well just be another Van Damme action movie.
Right, yeah. That's what I don't quite get.
There's a sense in which they just kind of, with the exception of sort of a change in the plot towards the finale, of course, an increase in tension between them. After a while, they may as well be one person for large chunks of it, for all intents and purposes.
They're apart for a lot of it. I mean, like there is a scene where they fight each other, and that's kind of fun. But for the most part, it's like I don't really see what the big deal is with this mechanic. Like there's not too much of the whole like identity swapping thing that's going on. You know, there's like one scene where they switch, but it's kind of inexplicable why they switch. There's this scene where they have to go to this club, and they try to like lay a bunch of explosives down in the club and stuff, and for some reason they swap places, but like why?
Yeah.
Why would they need to?
It honestly felt like it was getting to a point where the movie was like, let's try and remind everybody that they're actually twins, and just throw that in just to see we haven't forgot that they're twins.
Once you remove that, you know, when you remove the whole twins angle, it just ends up being another, you know, pretty generic Hong Kong action flick that, you know, it contains some fun, exciting action scenes, but nothing that's like truly notable.
No, it is just, it doesn't take a lot to get past the gimmick, because the movie does relatively little with it. And once you're past the gimmick, there's really not much here.
Overall, I'd say it's a little disappointing, but you know, if you're a fan of Van Damme, this does have double Van Damme.
When someone says to you, here's a movie with double Van Damme in it, you want that to be just completely, totally just everything happening at once. And the disappointment with it is, it gives you the double Van Dammes, and it doesn't really live up to that idea.
No, and like their personalities, like the personalities between Chad and Alex are like, they try to really define them, you know, like Alex is the bad boy. He's the guy who grew up on the Hong Kong streets, and he's like kind of working in the underworld, and Chad is the clean cut guy from LA, and
who wears magnificent pastels.
Yeah. He's like the nice guy. And the thing is, like, the line gets pretty blurred early on.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay, well, Alex has slicked back hair, and he wears a leather jacket, and he has this like cigar thing hanging out of his mouth. So he's the bad guy. He's the bad boy of the two.
It's not great. I keep coming back to that. You want more from this concept.
Like, there's like some stuff that happens. Like, there's a scene where Alex gets drunk and smacks his girlfriend, and you're just like, whoa,
yeah,
that seems completely inappropriate and like not cool at all.
Yeah, no,
that shouldn't be in there.
No.
They seem to like shrug that scene off, like, oh, you know, they don't even address it. It's like not even addressed later on. They're just like, it happens, and then they move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it gets to the point where the only things in this movie that stick out after a certain point that really stick in your mind are particularly inexcusable bad choices like that.
First of all, Chad and Alex, love the names.
Yeah.
I love that their names are Chad and Alex. It's like the most generic names ever. And I also love the fact that they very quickly try to explain away the accent, the French accent. So Alex is like left at the like a French embassy or something, like some kind of, there's like a French orphanage in Hong Kong. So, and you know how we know it's a French orphanage, because they're singing Frere Jacques when they drop him off at the door.
Yes, the famous period where Hong Kong was administered by France.
So that's how that's how Alex has the accent. Now Chad, they explain that away by like a really one-off comment where his Uncle Frank says that he raised him in France. And that's how that's explained very quickly.
Yes, they really, the movie just really takes advantage of just when you consider, I keep coming back to this, consider everything that this movie could be, and one of the occasions where they could just really come up with something original with regard to its concept, they come up with that kind of ridiculous coincidence and don't even, it feels like the movie is just emphasized in all the wrong aspects.
Just the general plot where you have, it's all about like this tunnel, like their parents facilitated the construction of this tunnel.
After
and
a point, I didn't even make an effort to try and understand the plot because
it's like so convoluted, and you're just like, who cares about this tunnel? Seriously, like, why are they even bothering? Why don't they just leave? Just leave. Like they didn't know each other. They didn't really remember their parents at all. Like they were just infants when this event occurred, when their parents were killed.
Mm-hmm.
Just get out of there. So you have Bolo Young's in there. I was glad to see him in the role of yet another henchman. I'm not sure that he ever played anything but like a mini boss for the guys to contend with, but he was in here and he kicked a whole lot of ass, as Bolo Young tends to do. And then you have, of course, there's a love interest as well, played by Alona Shaw, and her character was perplexing to say the least. She was actually like working for the guy who turned out to be like the main bad guy, and she was also Alex's girlfriend, and there's this like really weird chemistry like between her and Chad, and like there's this really bizarre scene when she ends up getting interrogated by this other woman who, anyway, there's this like female henchman, and there's this very strange scene where she like interrogates her in the office and like like essentially strip searches her, like frisks her and puts her hands up her skirt. It's like this just really strange, awkward scene.
Yes, it's
and I was like, what's going on here? And then there's a
sexual harassment plot point right in the middle of this movie.
Yeah. And then there's this really awkward scene when, so she, right after the weird interrogation scene, the girlfriend tries to call Alex, but he's out and about. He's in the jungle, as Chad puts it, and she needs help. So Chad goes to help her, and of course, like they're on this island for some reason, so they have to like he has to take a boat, like a tugboat, over to her and pick her up. And meanwhile, after Alex figures out that like Chad went to pick up his girlfriend, he just loses his mind. And there's this like 5-minute long sequence where it just shows Van Damme as Alex just drinking and slowly losing his mind and getting progressively like more and more violent, all the while flashing back and forth to this scene of Chad like making love to Alex's girlfriend.
It's
so
like it's like a 25-minute scene, it feels like.
It's so weird. It's just so out of place. And I think Van Damme was a producer on this, and it almost felt like he wanted an excuse to have like a love scene with this woman.
One would make that assumption. One would draw that conclusion from the information available. Yes. It is one of those things where it's a movie where as soon as you find out that the star was the producer, a lot of things suddenly start making sense.
Yeah, big time.
I also want to add, I was also trying to look up the cast list on this movie some time ago, or just look up information about this movie, but I ended up looking up the title of the next movie, which is a problem I had all week, is getting Double Impact and Hard Target titles confused with each other. And then despite the fact that Double Impact implies its plot, but also not, because it's hard to really think about this movie specifically being about much of anything. So I kept getting Double Impact and Hard Target confused. I kept completely forgetting the title of another movie we're going to be talking about. There was only one movie this month that I never ever forgot the title of it, and you will know what it is, listeners, when we get to it.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
That was the only one. That title remained with me for a long time. The other three basically were just vapor in my mind, just as title.
Yeah, I think this is, it's funny. Like I mentioned that I watched this for the first time just last June, so just over a year ago, and it was one of those movies where trying to recount it, because I was like, oh, do I have to rewatch this for this podcast? I mean, I just saw it not too long ago, and then I realized very quickly, like, yes, I do have to rewatch this because I forgot everything that happens in this movie. And I was like, it was one of those deals where I was remembering it as I was watching it, but yeah, it's just not a movie that really sticks with you. Like, there might be a couple moments here and there, but by and large, it's just a pretty generic 80s. It came out in the 90s, but this is an 80s action movie through and through. Mm-hmm. Next up, we have another Van Damme actioner, this time directed by the one and only John Woo in his English language debut. Released on August 20th, 1993, this is Hard Target.
Critics are calling Hard Target 100% action, a rocket-powered roller coaster, a supercharged blast of fireworks. With breathtaking, amazing stunts. How's it feel to be hunted? You tell me! Legendary director John Woo is a movie magician, and Jean-Claude Van Damme is the #1 action hero in movies today.
He's obviously not someone we should underestimate.
Hard Target, rated R. Now playing at theaters everywhere.
When a woman's father goes missing, she enlists a local to aid in her search. The pair soon discover that her father has died at the hands of a wealthy sportsman who hunts homeless men as a form of recreation. Adam, start us off with your thoughts on... I forgot the title again. Hard Target.
So where Double Impact I had no history with, no nostalgia for, Hard Target is quite the opposite. Mm-hmm. I loved this movie as a kid. This is one of two movies that we're going to be talking about this month that my cousin and I just would watch endlessly, just over and over again. Love this movie. And rewatching it now, I saw it not too long ago. It was a few years ago I rewatched it. But rewatching it for this show, I can say, yeah, this movie is still pretty badass, and I still enjoy it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to like about this movie. And I think that just goes to the credit of John Woo, who always had this sort of uncanny ability to over stylize everything, yet make it somehow not feel completely cheesy and over the top.
No, yeah, I mean, just as a testament to Woo's ability as just a filmmaker, just on a visual level. I cannot tell you a whole lot about John Woo's films. I've seen a few of them, but just the fact that it's kind of part of this film's history is that it was his first experience working with the American studio system that tends to take films away from directors. The fact that so much of his style still comes through and it so feels so much like a John Woo movie, even in the theatrical cut that we watched for this episode, really does say something.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like when you see this, it just has that John Woo signature all over it. Everything from the slow motion sequences to the birds. You got to have a slow motion bird scene in there. Like that's a prerequisite with his movies, and the over the top action sequences with slight bouts of kind of brutal violence in there. that's somehow like artfully done, that artful, beautiful violence that that John Woo somehow knows exactly how to shoot.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, bringing Van Damme in and having him star in his English language debut, I think was a smart choice, because, you know, during this time, early 90s, Van Damme was like a hot commodity, but I feel like he hadn't done a lot of like huge mainstream things. I think that, you know, Bloodsport was the big one that sort of broke Van Damme into the zeitgeist, but I think Hard Target is what kind of solidified him as an action star.
It's a really just solidly made movie that really just gets in there and does what it does in just such a well-considered way that, as you know, when people talk about the action scenes in a John Woo movie, it really is about just capturing and observing the physicality of every individual movement in an action scene in a way that, you know, 1,000 poorly directed or just action movies with mediocre direction never stop to investigate.
Watching this, or talking about these movies back to back, Double Impact and Hard Target, I think that you can see the contrast where Lettich is just he's directed some notable movies, including Double Impact, but when you look at his action sequences, his choreography, and compare it to Woo's, it's like there's no question. You know, when you see a John Woo action movie, it's like you're watching some kind of dance number. You know, it's just perfectly choreographed, and every scene has purpose. And with Lettich, it's just this this mess of, you know, explosions and fights that, you know, maybe look okay, but they're not on the same artistic level as something that Woo would do. The other thing, like looking at Van Damme movies in particular, I think that one thing that Woo utilizes Van Damme for in this movie, aside from the action, is the comedic presence that Van Damme is able to do.
Yeah.
Like, Van Damme can be a really funny guy, but it has to be the exact right script. It has to be this sort of understated, slight one-liners, and he can be really funny because his sort of deadpan delivery really works given the right script. And I think that that's another interesting contrast to draw between this and Double Impact, because Double Impact attempts to be funny on multiple occasions and it never quite works. Whereas with Hard Target, there's quite a few like little one-liners and one-off things that Van Damme does that are genuinely funny in this. I think one of my favorite scenes is during one of the big fight sequences. Van Damme has a shotgun and this guy's coming after him, and he just goes, "Hey, bitch." And the guy looks and he kicks the gasoline can and shoots the gasoline can in the air at the guy. And it was just like, everything about that sequence was just so perfect to me, from the line delivery to him kicking the gas can and shooting it. Like, I don't know if I had ever seen something like that done in a movie prior to this. I mean, we've seen it a million times since then, but like seeing something like that as a kid, you're just like, oh my God, it's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you see the difference between Double Impact, a movie that essentially showcases Van Damme as an action performer, and Hard Target, a movie that features Van Damme as an action performer and as just like a movie star with like a certain with a particular like leading actor's charisma and draw that really has to be considered as part of his persona, and how incalculably better a movie is if it knows how to use him to his full ability.
Looking at Hard Target in general, I think that this is another instance where the studios they allowed John Woo to be John Woo. I mean, John Woo was a controversial director for his time due to the level of violence that he would portray in his movies. I mean, obviously by this point, action movies are huge, and they were having a bit of a renaissance, like going into the 90s. Like Wu started to become really big in like Hong Kong cinema. I mean, he was directing, since the 60s. The dude was around forever, but he, with movies like The Killer and Bullet in the Head and Hard Boiled, movies like that were coming out in the late 80s, early 90s, like that's what really cemented his career. And those movies were known for having a level of violence that was much higher than a lot of these kind of shoot 'em up action movies. And you see that in Hard Target too. Like in Hard Target, Van Damme doesn't just shoot a guy. He decimates him with bullets. He shoots every person like 25 times. And it's just not something you see too much anymore in movies where every person he kills, he empties like 2 entire clips into that person. Like he makes sure you're dead. Like there's no question that you're going to be walking away after Van Damme gets a hold of you in this movie. I really enjoyed that about Hard Target. And of course, like one of the big things with Hard Target is the whole crossbow thing. Like, I don't know why that was like a focal point, but the big thing with this movie is the crossbow. I mean, it's in all the marketing and all of that stuff. And I think maybe the scene where the camera's fixed on the arrow flying through the air, I think that was like a really big deal.
You know what else is a big deal in this movie? As something
Wilford Brimley.
Oh, obviously, yes. The late great Wilford Brimley is great in this movie, as one would expect. 1993 was a great year for Wilford Brimley. He was also spectacular in The Firm, which I saw for the first time quite recently.
Oh, yeah.
He rules in The Firm. And he comes in here. I knew he was in it. I almost wish I didn't, because his character does not appear until the last act, and I think that would have been a tremendous surprise.
Yeah, he plays this really great, like, Cajun grandpa who is a complete badass and teams up with Van Damme to take down Lance Hendrickson and the other bad guys, and that he's so cool in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure, as we mentioned shortly before we started recording, we also need to mention that third act is around the point where, as part of a convoluted plot point that eventually gets the point across, and what I would imagine has to be a part of the movie that, if there isn't if this hasn't been kind of somehow turned into a meme in the vast quantity and quality in this case of the internet, it should be of the shot in this movie in which Jean-Claude Van Damme punches a rattlesnake in the face.
Yeah, there's a pretty great scene where, and now so they're going through the jungle, and a rattlesnake. So he's with the love interest. Got to have the love interest in there, and going through the jungle. And he tells her to stand still, close her eyes. She thinks that he's gonna kiss her, but nope, he's just punching a rattlesnake in the face. And then, so he punches it in the face and knocks out the rattlesnake. Then he grabs it, bites its rattle off, and then puts it back in the tree. And then the very next scene, you see that he has this, like, he fashioned this like tripwire like trap that it causes the rattlesnake to land on somebody's face and bite them and kill them.
Double impact wishes.
One thing that I'll mention about Double Impact also that I just remembered is that you do see a frog get killed in it, a real life frog.
Oh yeah,
too. So
yeah.
people that have problems with like animal killing on screen might want to just avert their eyes during. It's very brief, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also want to add for the record that when I was going back to try and make the joke Double Impact Wishes, I had to check again to get the title right. I had such a hard time with both of these titles.
My wife kept calling it Double Trouble.
I would probably remember that title more than Double Impact. What does Double Impact even mean?
I guess it's like two kicks to the face. Double the kicks.
Double. What does hard target mean?
Well, hard target. I think they actually say it in the movie at one point. Like he's a real hard target.
Oh,
The whole so like the whole point of that is that he, the other targets, the other human targets. Basically, this movie is just like surviving the game. It's one of those movies.
it's another Most Dangerous Game adaptation, except with more people punching snakes.
Yeah. So at one point they're commenting at how he's a hard target. The other ones were a lot easier than him.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a sentiment that is matched in Hard Target 2, which I can discuss because I did watch.
Please report to us on Hard Target 2.
Hard Target 2 is even more surviving. It's Hard Target 2 is essentially, they should have called it Surviving the Game 2, because Hard Target 2 is more surviving the game than Hard Target. So Hard Target 2 stars Scott Adkins, and it's really a sequel in name only. It's the exact same concept as Hard Target, where you have a group of, wealthy hunters who decide they're going to go after human targets, and Scott Adkins plays this fighter who ends up in Bangkok after killing someone in the ring accidentally, and he signs up for this thing not knowing that it's going to be people hunting him for sport, and they end up going to Myanmar, and it's exactly like Surviving the Game. There's even, if you saw Surviving the Game, there's this father-son dynamic that's at play there, where one of the guys brings his son and his son doesn't really want to participate. And that exact same thing happens in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that Hard Target 2 is not all bad. Like, it's better than Double Impact. Like, I'll give it that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's some really cool action sequences in Hard Target 2. It was way better than I thought it would be. But comparing it to the original Hard Target, there's no contest. Like, it's just, Hard Target is like so far above and beyond Hard Target 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to compare.
No,
there.
I mean, obviously, this is I had a good time with Hard Target.
I really wish that John Woo would just go back to making these like kind of hard-boiled action movies. I really wish he would. Like, I don't know if he is just beyond like that in his career, where he just wants to do other things, or what. But I really wish he would go back to doing these, because I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of his earlier Hong Kong movies, like Hard Boiled or Bullet in the Head, but man, or The Killer. Oh, The Killer's so good.
No, I'm not terribly familiar, but I do mean to. It's one of those great lists of directors that I keep telling myself I mean to watch more.
I haven't seen like all of his movies or anything like that, but all the big ones I tried to watch, and yeah, he's got good stuff going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of his later Hollywood movies are just iffy for me, like Paycheck.
I like Face Off. That's pretty good.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love Face Off. Loved Face Off.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Broken Arrow a lot too. Broken Arrow's really solid as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one that he did right after Hard Target. Cool. Anything else to add about Hard Target? I would say definitely check that out. It's certainly one of the stronger movies. I think it's the best movie that we're going to be talking about this month for sure.
I would say Hard Target. Don't confuse it with Double Impact and watch that by accident. That's not worth your time, but Hard Target is.
Hard Target is not my favorite Van Damme movie. My favorite Van Damme movie, and hopefully we'll talk about it at some point on this show, is Time Cop. Time Cop is still my number one Van Damme movie. For whatever reason, I love Time Cop.
We'll have to talk about it sometime then.
She's looking for a story. I understand you're considered a healer?
Legends are easily made in these hills.
He's searching for a soul.
What are you doing to me?
Suzanne Summers is seduced by evil on USA. Thursday, August 25th.
Our third feature this month was also released on August 20th, 1993, but carries a decidedly different tone than Hard Target. Directed by Neil Israel, this is the unforgettably titled Surf Ninjas.
They're three California kids. Hey, sir! Who've just been given the power of the ninja.
It's your destiny.
Now, kill him, whether they like it or not. Wow. They're America's newest secret weapon.
There's dynamite here. We'll throw it at him. I got one.
Surf Ninjas.
I love the part when I was like,
Rated PG.
sorry.
Starts Friday, August 20th at a theater near you.
Two Asian American surfer dude brothers discover they are the long lost princes from an island in the China Seas. Part of their inheritance are magically induced martial arts prowess. Wow, okay. Using their new powers, they act to overthrow the island's current dictator, a despotic madman. Wow, okay, all right. So, Ken, what's your take on surf ninjas?
Okay, so it's really a movie where you look at it and you think, this is absolutely a movie that, to like watching it, you need to have some kind of pre-existing connection with that goes far into your childhood. Because although there were moments in here that undoubtedly amused me, it took me like 4 days to watch this.
Oh yeah, okay. I have no connection to this movie. It seems like a movie that I'd be really into, and I remember when it came out when I was a kid, I really wanted to see it because I loved, as a rabid fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I was just obsessed with everything martial arts back then. I loved action movies, and I loved the Three Ninjas movies and any kind of action movies that I could get a hold of. And when this movie came out, I was all about it. But for whatever reason, I think my dad was just like, "No, I'm not going to take you to see that." Like, that just looks. I remember I saw it like on video much later, and I really didn't like it. And rewatching it now, I can say, yeah, I still hold that sentiment. I did not really like it. It's just, it's a goofy kids movie, but I think that even though if I went back and I rewatched Three Ninjas now, I think that I would probably not like that movie either. I think that Three Ninjas is probably still a better made movie than this. This is just, even for a kids movie, it's just too stupid to really grasp onto anything enjoyable about it. And like you said, it's surprisingly dull. Like, it's just kind of boring.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say, not having knowing much about the movie Three Ninjas, except that we briefly thought about it as a possibility to talk about when we were looking at the surprisingly long list of martial arts or martial arts adjacent movies released in August. Not knowing anything else about Three Ninjas besides that we thought about it briefly, I want to say how glad I am that the 4 movies we're not talking about this month are Double Impact, Hard Target, Surf Ninjas, and Three Ninjas, because I would literally never get the title of any of them right.
Yeah. I think that anyone who hears the term Surf Ninjas just immediately thinks of Three Ninjas too. Like they just like those 2 movies, they just seem to go hand in hand, and I'm not sure why. I guess they're kids movies about kid ninjas. Even though let's just set the record straight. There's really no ninjas in this movie at all.
No.
Like the people who attack the kids, they're sort of dressed like ninjas, but they're not really.
There's also hardly any
really
surfing.
Ninjas. Yeah, there's not really any surfing either.
Where did this title come from?
Well, I could probably tell you. It's some marketer. I mean, this movie seems like it's marketed to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crowd. Like, this feels like they were just like, hey, let's cash in on this martial arts TMNT thing we got going on here. Because, it feels so reminiscent of movies that were coming out during this time, like the Double Dragon movie, and it's just got that same vibe to it, where you have these like surfer dudes. And I think the big discussion point with this movie, obviously there's no ninjas. Ninjas are Japanese, first of all.
Yeah.
And this movie takes place apparently in like the South China Sea somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no ninjas. We've got that cleared up. The big thing that I want to
truly
discuss
bright
is Rob.
minds in charge of this movie.
The big thing I want to discuss is Rob Schneider.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. This was released in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Schneider is in it. He plays it's three. There's like three friends. So you got Rob Schneider, Ernie Reyes Jr., and what's the kid's name? Nicholas Cowan, who played Adam. So you got these three kids. You got a little brother, and then Rob Schneider and Ernie Reyes Jr. are in the same grade together. Rob Schneider was 30 years old when this movie came out. He was 30. He's playing a 16-year-old in this.
That is nearing like the cast of Grease levels of just completely wrong age casting.
He was already a cast member on SNL when this movie came out.
That was one thing I thought as I was like, well, the first time I see the Rob Schneider character, I'm like, clearly he's playing like somebody who's older than the kids by many years, right? Just like someone who's there. It's like a neighbor or something.
Nope. He is definitely one of the kids because that's what I thought at first too, because I'm like, there's just no way. But then there's a scene very early on in the movie when they're going to school and he's got like the backpack on and everything, and they're going to class, and you're just like, what? Mm-hmm. What is happening here? I mean, this is a guy. A year before this movie came out, he was in Home Alone 2, and he was playing like the bellhop guy in Home Alone 2. Hmm? So what's going on here with this? I mean, Ernie Reyes Jr. was 21 and he was playing a 16-year-old, so that's not much better, but that's still, I think,
it's like the kind of casting that happens.
Yeah, like
that, it's not out of the ordinary.
Right. And like his I think with Ernie Reyes Jr., like he could have passed as a high schooler, I think. Maybe not 16, but like a senior maybe. Mm-hmm. And he had the voice of a younger person too. He had that kind of California surfer dude voice. So I mean, I think that all tracks. Like that's fine. But Schneider, I couldn't wrap my head around that. He's 30. He's a 30-year-old man who's hanging out with a kid who's like 10. Like, it's not normal.
But contextually speaking, they're all supposed to be around the same age.
Yeah. It's just so bizarre. So you have Ernie Reyes Sr. in there as Zach, who I thought that they kept calling him Patch at first, but his name's Zach. Mm-hmm. He's sort of the guy who comes and introduces them to this mysterious land that they're now like princes of or whatever. And I think one of the other funny things is that once they unlock their powers, so Ernie Reyes Jr., he plays Johnny, by the way. So Johnny turns into this like crazy warrior. He's like just this badass martial artist all of a sudden. And then with the other brother, Adam, he's like what they call a seer or something, where he can like see the future. But the way that he does it is through a Sega Game Gear. So he has a Sega Game Gear, and he looks down at the Game Gear, and it's like a video game, and it shows him what's up ahead, the future, which I thought was such a 90s thing to see.
Yeah, there is, like, if nothing else, this is a movie that's just a complete explosion of early 90s.
Oh my God. There's so much 90s in this movie. It's obscene how 90s this movie is.
Mm. And in one of the original missions of our show, to point this out, the Tood levels just completely off the charts from start to finish.
So much Tood. I mean, especially like little Adam there. He's got all kinds of tude. Like, he does not respond well to authority at all. Like, they're in school, and he's just got so much tude that's just coming out of everywhere. The funny thing about this kid, when you see him, and it's funny because I watched this right after Only the Strong, and I'm just like, I almost did a double take because this kid looks so much like Mark Dacascos. It's like, I had to look and see if they were somehow related. These two are like, he looks like little Mark Dacascos.
You know what?
It's crazy. It's crazy. They use de-aging technology on Mark Dacascos, and
this was actually a technical predecessor to The Irishman. This is where they got the idea to do that in The Irishman from.
They cast Mark Dacascos.
Yeah,
he's like 35, and they cast him as a 12-year-old.
Yes.
You have Tone Loc in here as this detective, this cop guy who, for whatever reason, just inexplicably joins them on their journey. Like, he serves almost no purpose to the movie whatsoever. I'm not sure why he was there. I liked his character. He was funny. And I like to see Tone Loc in movies, but I kept questioning, like, what was his existence? What was the purpose of him being in this? I don't know. And then, of course, the big thing is you have Leslie Nielsen. You have Leslie Nielsen playing. I'm pretty sure his name is Colonel Chi. Is that right? Yeah. I'm looking at my notes here. I'm seeing Colonel Chi, CHI.
What?
Leslie Nielsen. Yep. Colonel Chi.
What a choice.
Now I'm wondering, how racist is that? How racist is the choice of casting Leslie Nielsen? How racist is this movie in general? Is my question.
Well,
because that's not the only thing that happens.
I mean, start with calling it Surf Ninjas, and it's set in the South China Sea. Yeah, like we were saying earlier, in terms of making the important production decisions and putting this movie together, not exactly the brightest minds of the era. Kind of one of those kids' movies that seems to have an open contempt for children in a way, just assuming that they're just so incredibly dumb that they'll just take whatever you throw at them.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So Colonel Chi, he's wearing what appears to be like a samurai suit. First of all, again, not Chinese whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
He is also like a cyborg. So he's like a robot. He gets run over by a tank, if I'm not mistaken, in the movie, or he gets run over by some kind of vehicle, and somehow survives and turns into a cyborg. And he's the bad guy. But the thing is, like, he's so poorly developed. Like, we don't spend that much time with him at all. Like, the motivations of them are just really not very well developed either. Like, we know they want to take over the island or whatever, but it's like, we need more. I thought with Leslie Nielsen being the bad guy that we'd see more of him. He's actually not even in it that much.
Anybody in this role.
Yeah, perhaps someone perhaps someone of Asian descent.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. There's also a scene where Rob Schneider does some sort of like Asian impersonation, which felt pretty offensive as well. So a lot of that going on in this movie too.
I don't know if you could tell, but we didn't like this movie very much.
No, it's pretty atrocious. Looking at Neil Israel's filmography, it looks like he did a lot of TV work. Pretty much all TV work for him. He did. I mean, his claim to fame, like the big thing that he did, was Bachelor Party, which we all know was like sort of the film that Tom Hanks, that was his breakout. Bachelor Party from 1984. And yeah, that's really the only other notable thing that he's done. Just a ton of TV after Surf Ninjas. Like Surf Ninjas was just the end of his film career.
I mean, I can't imagine. First of all, this is nothing against TV directors. That's great work. I mean, if you can find it, but there's no real signature to this direct. I'm going to say something kind of controversial. Surf Ninjas is not a particularly outstandingly directed movie. Yeah, it does
Really?
feel like it could have been anyway. It does kind of have that TV movie-like anonymity to it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say shocking there's not much of an auteurist stamp on Surf Ninjas. This is the movie where the only real takeaway from it is the title.
I think
I would
so.
arguably say this movie does not deserve that title, not only because it's not about Surf Ninjas, it's not good enough to have the title Surf Ninjas. Surf Ninjas should be reserved for a very specific kind of movie. It is a movie that has not been made yet, but I think when it is made, I think it should be kind of an outrage that the title's already been taken. So, at the conclusion of this review, I would like to hereby raise the motion to strip this Surf Ninjas of the title Surf Ninjas and replace it with, I don't know, what else could you title this movie? Rob Schneider is 30 playing a 15-year-old in it. Leslie Nielsen plays a character named Colonel Chi. I'd like to formally raise the motion to remove the title Surf Ninjas, replace it with the title Bad Casting Choices, but at least a lot of tude. Can I have a second?
I'll second that. Yeah.
All right. If there's anyone opposed, please say so now. No one's opposed. The motion carries via, I think that's how the parliamentary concept of unanimous consent works. The change is hereby adopted.
Good. Let us never speak of this title ever again.
Yes.
Our final movie this month is also directed by Sheldon Lettich and was released just a week after Hard Target and Surf Ninjas. Starring Mark Dacascos, this is Only the Strong.
It's called Capoeira.
You ready to try this yet?
It started in Brazil.
I want you to turn that music up.
Now the beat is sweeping America.
I like that.
It moves to a power all its own.
This is a Jenga. Can't Jenga, can't fight.
And it's turning the toughest kids in Miami.
You had a job you were supposed to do last night.
Into heroes.
We don't own this neighborhood no
more. Only the Strong. Rated PG-13.
Former Green Beret Louis Stevens returns to his hometown of Miami after completing military service in Brazil, only to learn that his old high school has become a haven for gangs and drug dealers. After Stevens uses his capoeira skills to kick several drug dealers off of the school property, Kerrigan, one of Stevens' old teachers, sees the impact that Stevens has on the students. Kerrigan gives him the task of teaching capoeira to a handful of the worst at-risk students at the school. Every month, we get a plot summary that is way too long for the movie that it's about. And that's this month's Only the Strong. Adam, start us off on this discussion.
This was another one of these movies that I really, really loved as a kid, which is kind of interesting because it's not a very well-known movie. It was not a very big or popular, critically received movie. Like, it was just this kind of, I mean, it came out in theaters, but I think that it probably really didn't find its home until it hit, the store shelves. But for whatever reason, man, I really loved Only the Strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you right now, like, revisiting it, aside from the nostalgia factor, aside from like it, evoking those fond memories in me, it's not very. It's definitely derivative. It's a very, very derivative, slightly generic action movie. It's not even an action movie. Let's back that up a little bit. It's like one of these Dangerous Minds style high school movies. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. According to what appears to be a completely uncited claim on the film's Wikipedia page, it is considered, to be the only Hollywood film that showcases capoeira, the Afro-Brazilian martial art, from beginning to end. Now, the wording of this sentence implies some things. It is considered by whom? to be the only Hollywood film that showcases capoeira, the Afro-Brazilian martial art, from beginning to end. So does that imply that there are films that showcase capoeira a little bit in the middle?
I think so. I think what that's saying is that there's probably some action movies out there where like the main guy will fight someone who uses capoeira. Like that, I think that that's probably what that's implying. Or there's like a one-off scene where you see some capoeira happening.
But that this is the only movie where it's a fundamental cornerstone of the plot.
Yeah,
I guess. I mean, I believe that.
I believe it too. I mean, I said this like as a kid. When you see capoeira, you're like, "Whoa, that's really cool!" But like, but watching it now, you know, I'm looking for an action movie, and you have this like Brazilian dance fighting that's going on, and you're just like, "That's kind of silly," you know.
I mean,
like as a dance style, I think it's cool, but using it in a fight, I think is impractical.
I think the problem here is that I think there's a way to make any movie interesting. I think the problem with this movie is that it's just not very compellingly made.
No,
it's a movie that itself does not seem sold that anything happening on it is interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that just goes to the derivative nature of the movie. We've seen this time and again. Like even when this came out, there were other movies that did this whole like, it's a teacher and he's going to go into class and he's going to go to the baddest kids and he's going to reach them. He's going to teach them something and they're going to change. He's going to change their lives forever. And he's going to use Brazilian dance fighting.
There was a movie where
silly premise.
This was a time, like you said, which there was a movie where they were going to use everything possible in the book. Like there was a variant of this movie where they were going to use something different every time.
The logistics of this, I found to be very confusing too. So they're already in school. Like he comes in, they're already in school. It's like middle of the year or something, and he comes in, and as the lengthy synopsis states, there he gets in a fight with a drug dealer on the school campus, and he kicks the guy's ass, and everybody's like looking and cheering and whatever, and the I don't even know if he is. I guess he's the principal. Whoever that guy is, who was also
might just be another teacher.
I think
somebody with no authority to actually create a program.
Right, the guy from Double Impact. Jeffrey Lewis is who I'm thinking of. Kerrigan. So you have Jeffrey Lewis as Kerrigan, he's like, you know, I see something here. There's something to this. So he gets Lewis, Mark Dacascos, to teach the 12 baddest kids capoeira. Now, I don't understand how this works. Like you're in class, like they said that they're going to use it as their gym class. So we have to assume that all the 12 kids have the exact same gym period. They all their schedules line up so that they all have gym at the same time. Okay, that's number one. So number two,
so perhaps it was more that the 12 worst kids that have that specific gym class.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is they buy a firehouse to do this training in. So why not do it at school if it's their gym period? Like you don't have like a football field or some other area that you can do the training. And they have to take a bus.
Yes.
You take a bus to get to gym class. Can you imagine having gym and being like, okay, time for gym, get on the bus? Like, that would be the crappiest gym class ever. So that's number two. Number three, they have it every day. Who has gym class every single day?
Okay, you know what? In the history of my schooling, we had like a weird block schedule program where like the first block, I basically alternated between gym and concert band, which I took for 4 years, but in case you couldn't tell from everything about me. Yeah, but I guess that would mean if you didn't, then I guess you would have gym every day. I don't know. You know, I haven't been out of high school that long, but as soon as you graduate, you forget everything about it.
Yeah, I just thought that was weird. I had gym twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, but I didn't have block scheduling. I just had regular, regular old.
I like how we're now interrogating the scheduling practices of this fictional high school.
Well, I don't know.
There's not a whole lot else to talk about. I thought DeCascos was all right in it.
I agree. I think that he was. I think that he was quite good, and I think that it gave him the
opportunity. He's a good presence.
Yeah, I think that it gave him the opportunity to show off his chops, because I think that not only is he a really good physical actor as far as his like martial arts capabilities, but he's also like a pretty decent all around actor.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that he was pretty good in this. Like, I loved it when he was in John Wick 3. I thought that it was really awesome that they added him. He was also in Double Dragon, which I mentioned earlier. He was Jimmy Lee in Double Dragon. So if you want to see some more 90s DeCascos, I might recommend that. And I really loved Brotherhood of the Wolf from 2001. He was awesome in that. I don't think he even had any speaking lines in that, but he was really good.
Yeah, I mean, I have few complaints about like the scene like technical mechanics or the cast of this movie. It's just conceptually this movie doesn't seem very interested in itself.
No, I would agree. Regarding the cast, like I don't have a huge problem with like the central cast. I think the kids, on the other hand, are a little bit iffy, considering that they all look like they're 35 years old. Like they're
all played by Rob Schneider.
Like these kids are like these kids are like a year younger than Rob Schneider, and they're like playing high school. Like there's like the scene when they're first introduced. Like the one dude gets out of the bus, he has a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and it's just like, what? How's that allowed?
Now I'm trying to figure.
And then also that same scene. So the scene when they first, like when he initially meets like the troubled kids, the one dude attacks him with a knife, and they let that go. They let that go.
Yeah. There's a whole lot that just happens. Like, that's what I mean when I say the movie doesn't seem interested in itself. That just happens.
And also that same sequence where they have their first class. Their first class is like literally 5 minutes long before he just says class dismissed, and they all have to get back on the bus.
Which really does feed into the idea that this is not that this is terribly unsanctioned.
Yeah.
I don't know who did greenlight this. What was the Jeffrey Lewis's character's job?
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. Like I thought he was a principal, but now I'm kind of questioning it because there's that other guy
who felt like a principal.
Yeah, he seemed more like a principal, but maybe that other guy was the superintendent or something. Or maybe Jeffrey Lewis was the vice principal and the other guy was the principal.
Maybe Jeffrey Lewis was just a guy who was there.
But we have to remember, when we're first introduced to the class, Jeffrey Lewis was in there teaching the class. So
he doesn't have anything to do with the school at all. He was just a health and safety inspector passing through.
Like what is going on here? I have so many questions regarding how this school is run. Like, no wonder it's being run into the ground. I mean, there's no structure to the school. It's just free form.
Anybody who walks in can just claim authority over operations.
It's like one of those like weird like private Christian schools where you don't even need any kind of like teaching degree or certificates or anything.
Oh, if we're going to talk about also my schooling history, if we're going to talk about private Christian schools, I could speak at length about that experience. Yes, when I spent some of my schooling at a private Christian school, as if to attribute the same line from earlier in case you couldn't tell from everything about me. Now I'm trying to figure out that line doesn't come organically to me. I feel like someone else said that and I've just been like co-opting that line and I can't figure out who it's from. So somebody tell me who came up with that, because that's something that I just think about a lot. It's just that line. Someone came up with that line and delivered it perfectly once, so that's just existed in my subconscious since, and I can't properly attribute them because I can't remember who it is.
So beyond having Mark Dacascos teach these kids, you have this other kind of subplot where the town, such as it is, I mean, it takes place in Miami, which is like the largest metropolitan area in the United States. It's like a giant city.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels very small towny, for some reason. You have these drug dealers who basically run the town, and I think it's his cousin. The one kid's cousin is one of the head drug dealer guys, and then the other guy's maybe his brother. But again, like, there seems to be a major age discrepancy between those two. The Jamaican brothers seem wildly, like, one seems like he's 40 and the other one's like 20. But
again, with the casting choices in these movies,
the interesting thing about this is somehow these gang leaders also know capoeira, and like they do like ceremonies and stuff. And I couldn't really tell if the Jamaican gang was also practiced capoeira. It seemed like it, because there was like that one sequence where they were doing like that kind of like ceremony thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought maybe those guys also were into capoeira, but the Latin gang definitely was into capoeira, which I thought was just, perfect. It just worked out so perfectly that somehow the main antagonist of this movie is also into this, at the time, not very widely known Brazilian dance fighting style.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that leads to another big conflict, and where like I love the one scene where they get mad. The guy gets mad that his like nephew or his cousin is being taught capoeira or whatever, and he burns down the school. Like, that's what he does.
Again, this movie, there's arguably something deeply unsavory about the implications of this movie's characterization of its world. But nowhere does it just go more 1 to 1,000 than just the school getting burned down.
Yeah, and one of the kids dies in the fire.
Yes!
So, yeah, I mean, it amps up like really quickly, because before this, it was pretty tame. There was that conflict there, but for the most part, it was like, Mark Dacascos getting through to these kids. He's starting to get through to these kids, and then this guy burns the whole school down. I mean, it was just so over the top, and just so crazy. There's also a scene in which a car explodes, and it was one of the strangest scenes. So Mark Dacascos goes, and he goes to this like chop shop, and he beats everybody up. And there's a scene where like they have all this money inside these cars, as I guess it's like drug money that they're moving, and he throws a gas can in, and he lights a match, and he throws it in, and the car explodes. There's no fire. There's a car that explodes in this movie through gas, like gasoline, no fire whatsoever. It like the car implodes. It's like it implodes rather than explodes. It's like the strangest thing. Like, I don't understand how
it just implodes into like a small, like extremely dense object. It's like it's like a black hole.
Yeah. Mark Dacascos opens up a black hole in this car and compresses it into like a small baseball-sized cube.
Yeah.
It's just really weird. Like, I don't know what happened with that, but Sheldon Lettich makes a lot of weird choices.
I don't think this movie really has much of a strong premise on a strong grasp on its own premise.
No, I don't think so.
I wouldn't take. I'm not taking advice from whatever this movie's supposed to be about.
I think it's interesting that this movie actually stars Mark Dacascos rather than Van Damme, considering Lettich pretty much exclusively used Van Damme for quite a while. I mean, he he had his debut with Lionheart, which was a Van Damme. Then he did Double Impact, Only the Strong. Then he did The Last Patrol, which was a Dolph Lundgren movie, and then went back to Van Damme with The Order.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much all he did.
Well, some of the recurring Sheldon Lettich crew is here with, I guess, Jeffrey Lewis.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I'm not an expert on the Sheldon Lettich filmography, so I don't know if that's like a thing where there was like a recurring company of actors, but
well, of course you do have a love interest in here because it wouldn't be a movie without one, and she's played by Stacey Travis.
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the other movies that we discussed, even Surf Ninjas, the love interests in these movies are relegated to tertiary at best and window dressing at worst. I mean, these characters are basically non-existent and serve almost no purpose whatsoever. Stacey Travis in this movie, her name is Diana, and at the beginning of the movie she has a boyfriend, and then she hooks up with Lewis, and there's not even like all of a sudden, like, I guess she left her boy. I don't know if they broke up beforehand or if she left him afterwards, but then like just all of a sudden, nope, they're together. They're a couple now.
Written out for the convenience of the plot.
Yeah. So there's that, which is, yeah, very, very minor, almost a non-existent subplot in this as well. Thankfully, that seems like something that they've started to pull away from in action movies. The required love interest, or if they include it, give them like more to do than just like be in peril the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the example of like when you talk about the idea of having representation in movies, that can only take you so far. Like, this is an example. You need more than just representation. You can say, we need more female characters in these kinds of movies. And so you could have female characters in these movies, but more often than not, they were just written in just these ways that are just, not just these very, like, serving extraordinarily minor roles in the context of the plot and just existing as an extension of the male protagonist.
Well, that being said, I still really enjoyed revisiting some of these martial arts action movies. I think that they're not the best of the decade, certainly. I think that Hard Target could be in the conversation, but it is definitely a subject that I would like to revisit in a future episode, because I think that there's still a ton of really great martial arts action movies that came out of the 90s. I mean, we're looking at, we haven't even looked at any Jackie Chan movies yet. And when Rumble in the Bronx came out in the United States, it was like a revelation. So I think that it's definitely a subject that we can dive into more in the future. But with that, I think that that's going to wrap it up for this month. Did you want to include any closing remarks before we close it out?
I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I definitely think it was interesting to look through this. I think it's nothing else. It's absolutely fascinating to think about out of the 4 movies we're talking about this month, 2 of them had the same director, and 3 of the 4 were released within a week of each other.
Yeah, and by the way, that was like pure coincidence.
Yeah,
too. Like,
I mean, you texted me that, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, like we decided on the
and
on
2
the
of them
lineup.
have the same lead actor.
Yeah, we decided on the lineup, and we could have actually done, I think, 3 Van Dammes, because there was another Van Damme movie that came out in August. I can't remember what it was. It might have been like Universal Soldier 2, or I can't remember, but there was definitely another Van Damme. As you mentioned earlier, a ton of martial arts action movies released in August. Like, that was the time to put these movies out. There was a bunch of Brandon Lee movies that came out. Dolph Lundgren had a few. There was a lot of big martial arts action movies in August, which was interesting.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. I think that's going to do it for this month. Thank you so much for listening. Let us know your favorite 90s martial arts action movies by shooting us an email at 90s@filmpulse.com or messaging us on Twitter and Facebook at 90spod. If you have a moment, please consider reviewing us on iTunes. That would be awesome. For Ken Bakley, my name's Adam Patterson, and this has been Saved by the 90s.
Bye, everyone.